Did you know that as of December 21st, 2023, the average yield for savings accounts at banks is 0.57%, while the average yield for the 100 largest money markets is an impressive 5.2%?
You have my attention.
These money market funds provide low-risk places to store your cash with great liquidity, often with low cost and requirements. They can serve as great places for things like emergency funds, short-term savings, or as the cash holding in your portfolio. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing my top 5 Fidelity money market funds heading into 2024 and which one or ones I'm going to use for my money saving goals. For the sake of simplicity, I wanted to establish a few guidelines for my top 5 in today's video, as well as showing you how I found this list. First and most obvious, all of these funds will be available for purchase for account holders with Fidelity, which is the brokerage I'm using, but you can also check to see if they're offered at whichever brokerage you're using. Second, I'm only looking for funds that have a $0 minimum investment, so the list will be usable to the masses. Lastly, this is obviously my preference, but a lot of you watching might be looking for some of the same things in your money market funds as I was, so I figured a video would be helpful. Okay, now on how to find this list. As with most things, you'll want to use your search engine of choice and then pull up the Fidelity website. Fun fact, I didn't actually have to be logged in to complete this research. Next, you want to go up here to the top of the website where it says News and Research and click on Mutual Funds. Then change the quick criteria on the left side from All Classes, All Categories to Money Market, and then click the green button that says View 31 Funds. Now, if you want to just review from here, you're done. But if you want the same list I reviewed, you'll go to the left side and click on the Fund Features dropdown and select Minimum Investment. And then back at the top, you'll select the $0 to $2,500 option. And if you want to see the yields, you can go over to the Daily Pricing / Yield tabs, and voila, you're done.
Magic, 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 magic.
Now that we're all on the same page, literally, let's see which of these 11 funds made my top 5 and which ones I'm going to use for my savings goals in 2024. Coming in at number 5, we have FDLXX, which is the Fidelity Treasury Only Money Market Fund. This fund has an inception date of January 5th, 1988. It has $4.59 billion in assets under management. We have that $0 minimum investment. It has an expense ratio of 0.42%, a current 7-day yield of 5.01%, the 10-year average 7-day yield for this fund is actually 0.95%, and a $10,000 investment in this fund 10 years ago would have actually accrued $985 in interest. Coming in at number 4, we have FZFXX, which is the Fidelity Treasury Money Market Fund. This fund has an inception date of August 31st of 1983. It has $44.86 billion in assets under management. We have that $0 minimum investment with a 0.42% expense ratio. This one has a current 7-day yield of 5% with a 10-year average 7-day yield of 1.13%, and that $10,000 investment into this one 10 years later would have accrued $1,014 in interest. Coming in at number 3, we have SPAXX, which is the Fidelity Government Money Market Fund. This fund has an inception date of February 5th of 1990. It has $298.62 billion in assets under management. Again, we have that $0 minimum investment with a 0.42% expense ratio. It has a current 7-day yield of 5% with a 10-year average 7-day yield of 0.98%, and a $10,000 investment 10 years later would have accrued $1,015 in interest. Coming in at number 2, we have FDRXX, which is the Fidelity Government Cash Reserves. This fund has an inception of May 10th of 1979. There's $227.11 billion in assets under management. Again, we have that $0 minimum investment, and this one actually has an expense ratio of just 0.34%. The current 7-day yield for this fund is 4.99%, while the 10-year average 7-day yield is 1.01%, and a $10,000 investment 10 years ago in this fund would have accrued $1,044 in interest. And my number 1 fund available in Fidelity is SPRXX, which is the Fidelity Money Market Fund. This fund has an inception of January 23rd of 1989. It has $98.33 billion in assets under management. Again, that $0 minimum investment with an expense ratio of 0.42%. The current 7-day yield on this one is 5.09%, while the 10-year average 7-day yield comes in at 1.13%, and a $10,000 investment 10 years later would have accrued $1,181 in interest. Now that you all know my top 5 funds, let me tell you which funds I plan to use and for which goals I plan to use them for in 2024. Currently, I have 2 savings goals for 2024 and beyond. First, the wife and I are going to build and maintain an emergency fund that covers 5 months worth of expenses. Once that's done, we will then create a new account with Fidelity Fidelity and begin saving for our house we will be building between 2026 and 2027. For the first goal of building and maintaining a 5-month emergency fund, this one is pretty close to being completed at the time of recording. Currently, we have $15,721.07 of this $17,000 goal, which we should be able to finish off around the time the new year rolls in. These funds currently sit in the default cash position, SPAXX, of the taxable account that I share here on the channel in my monthly recaps. Currently, I pretend anything under that $15,721.07 doesn't exist when I make my monthly buys. With that being said, once the $17,000 goal is reached in the coming weeks, I'm going to be leaving all of that money in that holding, even though it came in at number 3 on my list, because it's already there and any money added to this account goes into that position by default. Now for the bigger goal of building a savings up for the house we plan to build in a few years. Here's the game plan. Once we have our 5-month emergency fund in place in the taxable account, I will be creating another taxable brokerage account with Fidelity with the sole purpose of using it as a savings account for the house. The wife and I plan to be able to add between $2,700 and $3,000 per month into this account, sometimes more, between now and the time the money is needed as the down payment on our new home. Thanks to the research completed in today's video, I will be using the fund that came in at number 1, SPRXX, to make sure we are getting the most bang for our buck over the next few years. Before we go, I did want to tie up any loose ends and answer any questions I feel you might have. First question you might have is, what are my plans if the interest rates are cut going into 2024 and beyond? This is going to be a glass half full approach, because as the interest in our accounts begin to drop, 1, it will still outpace the interest we would have otherwise gotten from a traditional savings account, and 2, as the rates in our account drop, so will the interest rates on mortgages, so that's a win too. The second question you might have is, since these aren't risk-free investments, what is the likelihood that I lose my money during this time? According to Vanguard.com, this has only happened 2 times since the inceptions of these funds in 1971, which were in 1994 and 2008. Now, this is even less likely because, quote, since then we've seen several additional rounds of reform. In short, breaking the buck was a rare event before, but since the regulations have changed, it's even less likely to occur. And the last question you might have is, are these funds FDIC insured? Before I did my research on these funds, I was under the impression that these funds were FDIC insured, but they are in fact not. Does that mean that they are unsafe? No. As I just outlined, these are very low risk funds, and even more so now with the new reforms from the SEC. So in my opinion, you should not have anything to worry about, and in the meantime, you get to collect that sweet interest while working towards your savings goals. Before we go, if you have any additional questions for me that I didn't answer in today's video, go ahead and leave those in the comments down below and I'll make sure I get to them. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to drop a like and make sure you're subscribed with the bell rung so you don't miss any of my upcoming uploads. But until next time, see ya.